Welcome to video 6 of the video assembly guide for the de Havilland DH.89 Dragon Rapide. In this video, we'll be finishing off the nacelles and installing struts and also installing the motors. So it's hatch time. Here's one I made earlier. You can see there, that's the starboard one. I did write an S in there and then promptly covered it up with the internal structure. Oh well. So that's what it looks like. There are a couple of magnets. I put a sticker over that one, but there's no need to actually sticker up these magnets. The hatch itself is a relatively permanent fixture. The only reason you'd need to take it off is to access the motors if you were changing something or wanting to remove a prop or something like that. So it's an infrequently used hatch, let's hope. So it's pretty simple. We've got a couple of bits of Tyvek, we've got a bit of plastic, we've got some 2mm parts. That's actually P5. That's T7 and T8 there, and then we've got D17, 18, and 19 here in the 2mm foam. So let's just pop that one aside first, and the first thing we can do is just quickly assemble the foam parts. Now on this end where you've got this sort of curved piece here, that requires, I'll show you in a minute, can't read the number on it. Let's look. Looks like D19. Anyway, it's that part there, sits onto there, and you've got a slight overlap with the tongue coming out here. So make sure that's pushed home all the way, and then other end is where our other part goes. It should sit there, like so. Let's just glue that into place. It's, there's not a huge amount of contact point, but it's okay because we are going to surround it with some plastic. So the first thing we need to do is just put a curve into this mesh area here, and literally just start at one edge, just gently folding it slightly. And once I get to the middle, just turn it round and repeat the process from the other side. There you go. We have our curve. So that actually sits on our little foam structure like so, and then these sides fold down onto their respective foam counterparts. So what we can do here, well, there's that little hole there that allows our little tag to go through. I'm just going to pop some glue onto the rear side of those end pieces that fold down. Okay, like so, and then just, in fact, what I'll do is I'll put glue onto the frame itself. go. And then it's about positioning it centrally on the frame. Positioning this centrally on the frame. Obviously, the shapes of these end pieces should indicate which way round it goes. Go. I'll actually start at this end here. Fold that down. That should fold out into the rearmost part there. So this is the back one where we've got the protrusion. That's the back of the structure. In gluing the frame, I've actually managed to put glue onto parts that it doesn't come into contact with, so I'll just remove that for now, although the Tyvek will cover that eventually. So the other thing to check is that the edge of the plastic lines up with the edge of the foam. There we go, we have a more solid structure now. I'm just going to, there's my knife. Just going to use the knife just to push the parts together where I can't get a finger in. There we go, push that down. And we'll just set that aside to dry off. And then we can concentrate on our Tyvek. I'll put a little spur there and just trim off. Okay, there are a number of things that we need to do. This is the back edge that faces back over the wing. This is the front edge facing towards the prop and etc. Now, when we put it onto this structure, we actually need a 3mm overlap at the front here. So now is probably the best time to actually measure and mark. So I'm just going to measure 3mm from that leading edge. Just put a few marks. Along there. So then when I come to fit it, I know where the edge has got to sit. So I'm putting it there because that's going to fold over. So why don't I just run faint line along there. Not exactly faint. There we go. So the other thing we need is there's a little bit of reinforcement on the overlap at the back of the part. So I'm just going to sit that just there. Just a simple process of gluing that. Just make sure it sits centrally on the panel. Make sure we haven't got an overlap. I'll show some of the white material. And press that home so that we get good adhesion. Okay, and while that's drying off, there are some notches that have been lasered into the part itself, and these are to indicate where we should score on the rear side of the Tyvek. So just position my rule there and back of the knife. Let's score in, and then we'll do exactly the same on the other side. So these should now fold over on themselves, these edges. So. And we can glue those down. I'm just putting the glue onto one of the sides, and then I'm just going to fold them down, transfer some glue over onto the other side of the material, and then we'll just let those fall open, dry off, and we can come back and fold those in on themselves. Right, let that dry, and I'll come back to you when that happens, and we'll shape this and pop it on there. Okay, I've given it a couple of minutes, so we'll just fold those in. They should stick immediately, and then we can encourage them to stay with our little ball tool, or you can use the handle of the knife like I have done previously. There we go, job done. Right, before I go and shape that, I'm going to actually pop the magnets into the two holes there. So I'm going to add a little glue into the area. And let that dry off. Now, there's a good argument here to actually use foam safe CA or something similar. I've got a little pot of rocket fuel here, and that would be a nice way to retain those magnets as well. But I'm going to stick with the foam to foam. It seems to do the job, and as I said previously, the magnets aren't doing a tough job here. So I'm going to let that actually dry off slightly, put it to one side. While that's happening, I will shape this this little nacelle cover or engine cover. Very simple. Get my my paintbrush with the nice sort of fairly straight handle. It is tapered, but, and then I'm just going to put the part in the palm of my hand, and then literally just push down on it. So it pushes it into the flesh of my hand, and then just keep it rolling round. Just change sides so we get a nice even. And there we go. Hey presto, we have a rolled hatch cover, nice and smooth, which is exactly what we want, and that we can then pop onto our framework once we've got our magnets installed. So let's just grab some magnets. Now we've already installed magnets in the nacelles themselves, so we need to orientate these so that they when we fit them in there, they're the right way around. So bring on the aircraft. I'm just going to literally throw the magnet at either side, and then it's that way. Don't forget that little nubbin sticking out is rearward, and then I'll use my little slide the knife technique to slide the knife behind the magnet, pull it off, and then that's the right way around once I insert it into the provided hole. And there we go. That's in there now. I can grab the magnet at the front there, onto the knife, and then swipe it into the hole. Go. Let the glue do its job, and that will need a good sort of, I guess, overnight before I reintroduce it onto the nacelle. So fitting this skin onto the framework, we've got our line to actually come up to and we install, and obviously we want it to install evenly as well. So what I could have done, which I didn't, is measure the center point of that. Well, I could do it now, couldn't I? So let's just see. So that's 4.4, so 2.2. That should be around about the center, just there. So get it the right way around, and then I'll position that centrally. Like the overlaps should be around about equal, and same at the back too. So what I'm going to do is add some glue to our framework, and then I can pop the skin over, and then we can muck around with it until we're happy that it's where we need it. So I'm just putting the glue in the critical areas. Don't need to smear it all over the place. A little bit across the top there. Go. Need another tube soon. Right. So that, nowhere near the center. Line it up. There we go. Good. That's about where I want it. And then on the rear portion, once again, that's just about where I want it. So not too much faffing around, thankfully. So I'm going to just let that detach as it may want to, and let the glue dry, and then we can use its contact properties to bring the whole thing together. Right, let's just finesse this. So once everything's glued together, that should sit nice and flat, not be rocking back and forth. It would be quite easy to get it slightly twisted, so it's worth keeping an eye on that. And a good test for that is just by putting it flat on the ground and making sure that all the edges are touching, that should be touching. So as I said, I'm not going to actually pop that onto the nacelle yet. I'm wait for the glue to dry, completely on the magnets. But what I will do is show you with this other one how the hatch literally just pops on like so. Okay. Sometimes, as you can see here, I've got the edge of that skin is actually making contact with the edge of skin on the nacelle. So it's just a matter of settling in. I'm just going to pop the knife underneath just to pop it over, and so it overlaps. You'll notice that the skin should contour around the leading edge of the wing, and should sit. You can have a sort of a quick look inside as well, just to make sure everything's sitting where it should be. If you find that this is slightly raised up at the back here, you can actually just remove a little bit of the material here to make sure that so that it sits a little bit further down in the nacelle. I'm going to shave not even a millimetre, quarter of a millimetre. Go. There. That's better. So there we have our nacelle. If you can hear whimpering in the background, that's Percy's dreaming. He's probably chasing a squirrel. So there we go. We have our nose, our top hatch, and our nacelles. Our nacelle tops, hatches, complete now. We're swapping our knife for our paintbrush. Don't worry, we're not painting the whole thing. In your kit, you will have a number of vac form parts. This is the nacelle cover over the top of the wing, and obviously the nose of the nacelle as well. On the livery that we've got here, which is the GAGSH livery, that's currently housed in Shuttleworth, in the Shuttleworth collection. The overall sort of main color is silver. Now, obviously, on the material that we use, it's printed as a sort of a grey to emulate the silver. But we're actually going to use or I'm certainly going to use I'm going to put a base coat primer on, which is a stone grey, and then I'm going to put on some aluminium silver mixed with a little bit of blue to try and match it to the colour that we've got on the Tyvek, and the foam on the wing as well, somewhere in between those two. So I'm also probably going to use the just a tiny smidge of the azul blue. Yeah, so there we go. Right. I've got a little tray here. I'm going to put my paint in, and I've got some water as well, because this is acrylic. I could use acrylic solvent, but water works just as well. So we'll give this a good shake, and then we'll get our primer onto the plastic. So there we go. Just a little there. And we'll just start the application. Probably put on several coats. And I'm doing this before I cut the stuff out as well. It's just easier to manage. As you can see, initially the paint is pulling back slightly. I should have actually degreased this before painting, but I can give it a quick once over once this paint's down, and then we can get it cut out, and then we can do a little bit of touching up around the edges if we need to. So of course, if you are lucky enough to have an airbrush, then you can get a wonderful finish on these parts if you are adept at the use of the airbrush. So, as I said, it's probably worth giving this a wash. I didn't realise that there would be so much on it that would cause problems for the paint, but anyway, we seem to be well primed up there. We'll let that dry off, and then apply another coat. I'll come back to you when that's done. Okay, so I put a couple of coats on here. We've now got the primer on. Well, I say primer, it's just a grey base colour. So now we'll lay down some metallic with a little bit of the blue in to see if we can match up the kind of colour that we get on the nacelle and the wing there. So first of all, we've got our metallic here, the matte aluminium. Let's just pop some of this in here. It's well shaken up. And then literally gonna dab probably one drop. There we go. One drop. Let's blend that together. Okay, so that's all blended. Let's pop some down. Just get some off the brush there. Okay, right. So we'll just do a very quick coat. It's going on quite well actually onto the base colour. And then we'll let it dry and see how it matches up. Okay. Okay, I don't want to go over too many times because it tends to, with the acrylic paint, it tends to lift off if you put too much on at one go. So just giving it a good overall thin coat. As I said, it goes down quite well onto this grey base. So coverage. Okay, so we'll let that dry and see if it matches up. I might put an extra coat on there because that went on very lightly, but we'll see. Come back to you in a second. So it's sort of dry now. I'm just going to grab the aircraft and look at the tone of it up against the material of the aircraft, and I'm pretty happy with that actually. I think that's going to work for me. I don't want to experiment too much, so we'll go ahead. I've just put a little bit of water in the existing paint. I haven't put any more blue in there or anything like that, and we'll just give this another dash over. And that should be us done. Whilst you've got this colour, you could also do the spinners and finish those off in the same colour. So once this is all dry, and I'll probably give it a good overnight to dry off, then we'll come back and start cutting this out. The other thing you could do is apply, and which I probably will do, is just apply a varnish over the top. I'll probably put a matte varnish over this to dull it down a little. Obviously, the skin on the actual aircraft itself isn't too glossy, so I'll try and dull that down a bit so we can sort of match up the reflective qualities of it as well. Anyway, there we go. That's all done, and we'll come back once that's dry, after I put a bit of the acrylic varnish over the top as well, and we'll start cutting it out. So here we have the painted over wing parts of the nacelle. I've cut the noses of the nacelle off here. The eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that we got the moulding slightly wrong, and here's one of them. They were actually, one of them was handed, and obviously on the Dragon Rapide, the nacelles are exactly the same. They're not reversed. They are like so. So we've remolded our vacuum form bucks, and so we're now producing them like so. So we have our full set there. I've also given these a wash with a combination of a matte and gloss acrylic varnish, which sort of adds a well, it allows you to get a surface, an eggshell finish on the surface, and it also protects the paint too, which is a good thing. Now it allows you to buff them up a bit as well. So obviously you can. It allows the sort of the touching of them doesn't remove paint or anything like that, which is great. Now, obviously, we now want to extract these from the main part of the plastic, and you will be able to see on your moulding there is a ridge all the way around. You're not cutting right into the edge there. There's a sort of a flange around the outside of the main blister shape of the part, And to actually cut this out, I'm actually going to start using scissors, a knife, and the other tool I will be using is a sanding stick too. Now obviously, because I painted these before cutting out, we've got to be quite careful so we don't remove any of the paint. If we do, obviously we'll have to just touch it up, but if we can be careful about it, we can get away with without having to do any painting at all. So let's start with one. I'm just going to divide them into two first, so they're easier to handle. Pop those over there. We can actually remove those for now from our vision. And firstly, I'm just going to do the easy bits. Just go across the front there. We'll actually be removing this piece here as well. And also, whilst we're at it, you'll notice that there are a couple of dimples, or 3 dimples here. There's one there, and one there, and they are for the struts to insert into the structure. So we'll actually need to create holes where these little inward dimples are. The rest of these are for visual appeal, and they represent obviously that's a little blister over maybe some sort of part in the engine, and this is, I believe, a filler cap. So now we need to just run down the area that's shown on here, that's raised from the main part of the plastic, and obviously do it carefully, because it's you go too far, there's no going back. So there's this sort of curved bit at the end here. I'm just taking it nice and easy. If you aren't particularly good with scissors, you can always do this with a knife, just running the knife through. You don't need to do it all in one. You can just run the knife over it a number of times. I'm being terribly quiet because I'm concentrating. You've got to be careful when using scissors, because when you start hitting this part of the scissor against the material, it starts guiding the cut where you don't want it to go. So there we go. So that's my part 3 now. It needs a little more preparation. There are areas that need a little bit of an extra trim. I didn't quite get it right. But once I'm relatively happy, I can then just take my sanding stick, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce the material. You can see there's a sort of a white line where we've made the cut. What I want to do is reduce the material down so that white line disappears, or almost disappears. So just going to give it a good sanding on the underside. This will also obviously rough things up a bit, so with the glue it should stick better. We should get a larger contact area as well. And I'm doing the sanding before I remove this piece too, because that's quite structural and keeps the whole part from flexing too much. As long as I'm sanding on the underside, I'm not really affecting the paint up top. So it's only if I were to sort of go around the sides like that it would take paint off. So we're going to avoid doing that. I can see that that white line where the plastic is exposed is starting to disappear now. So I'll continue sanding that. It's going to take a little while. And when I've finished that and got the other back form part free, I'll come back and we'll take the next step. So here we go. We've got both of our overwing mouldings, and all nicely sanded down, ready to install. Apart from, we've got to remove this portion here from both. And the easiest way I found doing that is with the knife, and just gently running the knife around the inside of the part itself. I'm not cutting through all the way to start off with, just creating a channel in which my knife can be repeatedly drawn around the semicircle. It only takes a couple of goes to start going through. Don't think my knife is particularly sharp at this moment in time, but this isn't difficult material to go through. So nearly there. There we go. And I think actually that's not bad at all. There's much more needed to be done. So we've got these little slots here that we need to just cut out to allow one end of the struts stroke rigging to go through. So I'm just pushing the knife into the slot that's created, just to remove some material. Do same on this side. There's quite a lot there. Go. And then this little slot here, which is a little more difficult, but just use the mold as a guide to cut in two lines parallel to each other. You can actually use it, rather than use the sharp end of the knife, I'm just using the back of the knife just to sort of push an even slot right up to the edges of the moulding. And then I've got some material on the inside that I can just remove. There we go. So I'll do the same on the other one, and then we'll come back and start fitting the front end of this. So here we have D20 2mm foam pieces, and we've got two P10s as well, plastic pieces that have got a little bit of print on. In this case, it's a grey. Now the idea is that the plastic sits on top of the foam part. So we'll just stick that on in both cases. Oh, not much coming out of my super nos. Looks like it needs a bit of a clean. We'll just do that. And just find a little bit of wire we can push through to clear it. There we go. So let's try that again. Oh, we've got quite a lot coming out, so I'll share that between the two foam pieces. I'll just put that on there just to transfer the glue over. And then we'll pop our plastic parts onto the semicircles. You'll notice the 2mm parts have got some slots in, and they should correspond with the slots that we've just cut in the vac form parts. And as you can imagine, that just sits up there like so. So we'll just apply a little glue around those edges. So I'm just going to pop that in there for now, just to transfer some of that liquid glue over to the edge. So, and I'll take them apart, do the same for this, let that glue dry off, and then use the contact adhesive quality of the glue to bring the two parts together again. Go. Okay, let's start putting these together. We need to obviously try and get the bottom edge here as flush to the bottom of this vac form piece, like so. So it's nicely pushed in there. And ditto on this side. There we go, happy with that. Okay, well, now we can think about attaching these to our airframe. On it comes. And as you can see, we have these nice light areas here that indicate where our parts go. Now, by keeping our nacelle cover, our hatch, in place, we can actually get a very good placement of the actual vac form piece, and it should sit nice and neatly onto the wing like so. So it literally just requires a little bit of glue on these flanged areas here, and then on it can pop. There should be a little bit of an overhang at the back. And what we will do when we bring this to bear on the wing is carefully place it so we don't smudge too much of this glue around the place. Obviously we can clean it off but if we don't have to clean it off, then that's a step we don't have to take. So let's not drop it on there. There we go. And I'm just going to leave that to sit on there and dry off. I don't think there's any need to whip it off and wait until it dries. That should be fine. Okay. On to the second one. Let's just dry fit first. Always dry fit, just to make sure. Yeah, that's great. Just running the glue around the outside. I know I've probably said it 1,000 times already, but this nozzle thing works really well. So I hope yours works as well as ours is working too. So, right. Careful placement. Move that slightly. Let's try that again. Okay. So there are our vac form parts on the wings. We can leave those to dry off, and in the meantime we can prepare the limited amount of strut work that there is between the fuselage and the nacelles. So let's get on with that. Actually, before we put our struts on, it might be a good idea for us to put the little fillet between the wings and the fuselage, which is actually a Tyvek piece. I'll just get them cut out. I'll give you the part number when I've found them, and I'll show you a great technique for getting these put onto the fuselage nice and neatly. T47, which is on the starboard side, T48, which is on port side. And what we need to do before these are applied, I'll just show you where they go. They sit neatly along the wing there, and curve over the leading edge and stick on the underside. It should match up with the little flare on the lower part of the fuselage there. So, and what we need to do first is obviously give this some shape. So we're going to use our little paintbrush handle, and then just curve the part around the handle itself, just to give it that sort of scooped, scalloped look. So if you want to push it a little further, you could use a piece of carbon fibre. I think you probably get a few bits of carbon fibre in the kit. You might have some lying around, or just just a rod of some sort that's slightly narrow. I think I'm a paintbrush is probably a little bit narrower, so just going to use that to increase the curve. go. And of course then we need to also curve it so that it forms over the leading edge of the wing. So like so. There we go. So we're pulling it and pushing it in all sorts of directions. Looks like I had something on my paintbrush there which just got onto the material. That seems to be coming off. So there we go. So to apply this, I'm going to start at the back there, marrying those two parts up, and then move it forward and loop it and secure it around the underside of the wing. What I'm going to do is add some glue where it's going to come in contact with the fuselage and wing. Run it all down the edge there. I'm just going to leave that end where it goes under the wing free from glue at the moment. Okay. Now I'm not going to bring this into contact with the fuselage. I'm going to just put that to one side and let it dry. And I'm also just going to put some glue on the little outcrop that we've got here. There we go. I'll do that on the other side too. And that just means when we bring those two areas together, it's going to properly stick at the back there, which will give us a nice anchor point to actually finish off the installation. So let's work on our port side part as well. Give that a nice curve. Go. Sorry, I'm doing this out of camera shot. Go. Right, I'll just apply some more glue to this particular part. Just clear a little blob there. Okay, and just finish off running up the other side too. The idea here is to allow the glue to dry so that it's still a little bit tacky, but it's not going to smear around all over the place. Just pop that on that side. So hopefully this particular part is now got a tack, but not too runny. So let's just match it to there. So we've got our anchor point. into that gap there. So just going to use the knife just to press it firmly into that area. Making sure those edges come into contact. And the other tool that we can use, now our new ball on a stick. And that's rather good at pressing those edges into place. That's mimicking the underside. That's it. There we go. So we haven't put any glue on the underside yet. What we can do is now pop some onto the Tyvek, like so, and then we're just going to fold it. There's a little slot back there as well, so avoid covering that because that's for our struts. So I'm just going to let that dry off now. I've let it sort of come away from the material, come away from the glue point, but we'll let that dry off. I'm going to pop on the other side on. So once again, get a good anchor point at the back there. So go straight to this tool. It seems to be very effective at this sort of work. And then just make sure everything's stuck down well. Okay, so flip that over and do exactly the same this side as well. There we go. Top scooted off there. Let's just pop that back on. Let's just pop that into place there. There should be some enough grab there now. Fantastic. Okay. There's this rather wonderful tool. Go. And we'll let that other side dry a little bit more, and I can fiddle and faff now. Smooth these down. Brilliant. So that really neatens up that junction between the wing, the inner wing, and the fuselage itself. Put that down too. That should have enough sticking power now. There we go. Right, onto the struts. So here we have P15 and P16. These two parts are the struts that go on the underside of the fuselage, between the fuselage and the nacelle, around about sort of halfway down the nacelle itself. What we need to do first is reinforce these, because at the moment they're pretty flexible, as you can see, very bendy. So we're going to reinforce those with some strips of carbon fibre, and then we're going to cover that carbon fibre with a sticker. So here's our carbon fibre. We need to cut this to, I think it's 49 millimeters. So I've got my little 6-inch ruler here. I can measure 49. There we go. Nice and easy. Let's just check if that is right. Yep, that looks perfect. So we'll cut our second piece using our first piece as a guide. There we go. And then we just need to stick these two to our corresponding plastic parts. So we just run a bead along the wider edge, this part here, and pop that on to a plastic strut. There we go, which immediately stiffens it up. So you can see here that I've run, there's a little score here that allows this end bit to flex. So we don't want to run over that score, otherwise it'll stop the whole thing flexing. So at 49 mil, you should go between the score for that the strut end there, and where the arrowhead starts. That's the position of it. Let's just get this other one underway. Go. Get it roughly in the middle, or accurately in the middle. There we go. So now the rest of the process is to put one of our stickers over, and I believe the sticker we need is S4. Let's just check. That looks about right. So let's far away S4. Just pop that. Now at the moment you just need to run it across the carbon fibre. Obviously we want to get it corresponding to the part as accurately as possible, so we don't have any overlap. So that's on top of the carbon fibre. Now I can press it home and bring the edges of the sticker down onto the part as well. Now you can actually just run the back of a knife down the edge of the carbon fibre to bring that sticker down into place, and the extra glue that may have squidged out from between the carbon fibre and the plastic may well help to adhere this nice and firmly and completely. So let's do the second one. Another S4, there's no difference between the two stickers here. Either one can be used for either strut, although the struts are handed themselves. Go. And another one. Fantastic. Excellent. So now what we need to do is install these struts. And that little slot that we avoided covering up, that's what the arrowhead goes into. And then the strut itself comes to bear on the nacelle. What we need to do is just, as I said, this is scored. We just need to bend this up slightly, like so. That creates a nice little platform on the end that should neatly sit against the nacelle, and the front edge of it, that sloped front edge, should marry up with the slope on the graphic just there. So like so. So now what we can do is just add a little bit of glue to either end of the strut. So pop it into place. We're going to allow that to dab its glue onto the area that it's going to sit, and then we'll just let it dry off so we can use that quality of the glue that allows it to stick once it's dry. The same again here on the other side. Glue there, bend that up like so. Put the glue there. Little glue on here. And into the slot. And then this is a little more complicated because we have an exhaust in the way, but we just want to behind the exhaust and just pop it into place there. And make sure the glue is transferred. And we'll just let that sit it out until the glue is dry. Right, whilst that's drying, we can start concentrating on our next strut job. So here we have P13 and P14, and these have a special end to them that you can fold over like so and glue into place, and they have a little notch in them that you can pop the carbon fibre in when it comes to that time. So let's just add some glue, press that home, and we'll just let the glue dry off, and then we'll bring it all together so it comes together nice and firmly and quickly once that glue's dry, and then do the same again on the other strut. Now Looks like these need 65 millimeters of carbon fibre each. Let's just check that's the case. Seems reasonable. So let's just measure off 65. Use twice, cut once. Go. Let's push these little fold over tabs firmly home. And the glue is dried somewhat. And then that's where our carbon fibre goes. So let's just add a little run of glue, which is important. This carbon fibre sticks quite firmly to the strut itself. You can get, if it's not well stuck down, then during its lifetime you might find that it delaminates from the plastic, which obviously you want to avoid. So sticking it well in the first place is key to avoiding that. And once again, make sure we've got stickers to adorn the other side of this strut and mask the presence of the carbon fibre. Go. So these are actually the forward upper struts on the fuselage. We'll show you where they go very shortly. But on our lump of stickers here, we're looking at S5 to decorate these struts. So it looks like these stickers are slightly too long. Sometimes we can be a little bit over generous with our material. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off the back there, once I can get to it. Go. Just run the back of the knife down. Get it all sat into all of the crevices and help keep everything firmly in place so we don't get that delamination that I mentioned earlier. Go. There's one strut done. Go. There we are. Right, so we'll just pop those to one side because we've got our under struts to adhere yet. So hopefully that glue is nice and dry now. We can just pop that into place. There we go. And same this side. So just getting around the exhaust. And just getting that firmly into place. So it's got some flexibility about it, but it's certainly nice and stiff, and really does add to the strength of the aircraft, which is great. Right, so our upper struts. Well, the blunter end goes into the slot here. What I'm going to do is just remove the nacelle cover, engine cover. There we go, so I can have access to it here. I'm going to make sure that that slot is available to the strut. So at the moment that's not going to go in because obviously we've got our plastic face here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some slots in the cut file for that front piece there for the plastic to match up with the slots in the foam. But in the meantime, I'm just going to cut off one of the little wings on this strut here. That's easier if I use the knife. There we go. And then that should go in nicely. As said. And the strut itself is oriented so that the carbon fibre is on the underside, by the way. So there we go. That's better. And there is, in the fuselage, you'll be able to see there's a tiny little slot here that's already cut. I'm just going to wiggle the knife into it so that when it comes to put the spike in, I'm going to bend that spike down a bit. It should go in with very little problem. There we go. So there we go. That's how our strut sits. And what we'll do now is just take it out, add a little glue so it's a permanent fixture. And then just put it back in place and let it dry off. There we go. So on to the other side. Once again, let's get rid of the engine cover. These magnets really do work very well. And just open up that slot. Just remove some of the material here, which hopefully you won't have to do, but there we go. Just make sure that that all fits in before we glue it all down. Excellent. Bend the spike in, push a scalpel in. There we go. Perfect fit. Right. Let's glue that into place. And then we can move on to our third strut. Fabulous. Great stuff. Okay. Let's just pop that to one side. And we will make our final strut. So here we have P11 and P12. Once again, they have a fold over piece, like so. And then they have a stretch here that requires a piece of carbon fibre, and that is about 60 millimeters. So let's get the power of this glue working first. Go. Okay, put that to one side, and then we will cut our carbon fibre. 16. Go. Another 16. Right. Just complete that fold. Don't worry that this isn't printed on this side, because there's a sticker that will go over and cover all of that. Glue on. There we go. Same again for this one. Bit over. Go. Okay. Just popping it centrally, really, on the strut. There we go. So it should be pretty obvious on the sticker sheet that S6, S7 are the stickers to use. So let's just position this down on the foot. Okay. Just going to head up the strut. Once again, generosity knows no bounds. With additional sticker material. Just trim that off. Get that sticker nicely stuck down. Go, right. Next one has 7. She is. Try again, it's a little bit too far back. Seems to be better. Just don't want any white showing the other side. The sticker material is quite compliant. It will stick down to the sides as well of the strut. Before we do that, let's just take that extra piece off. Now, if I cut that now, I cut my spike off as well, which isn't a good idea. There we go. That's better. This one seems to flip over all the time. Okay. Right, so 2 more struts. Let's bring on the main event. So it's fairly easy to see how these struts go because of the shape. The curve of the bottom of the strut sits against the curve of the engine part, which should be pretty easy to see. And once again, there should be a little slot cut in the Tyvek, just this end. I can just quickly squeeze a knife in there just to put some gaps in the foam itself, and then just bend the spike down, and that should sit nicely in there, like so. There we have our second strut in place. So let's just remove that, because that was just a dry fit. Give it a little more room in the plastic, just cut a little bit more away. That's quite tight. And then we will add our glue. and get these final struts in place. Go. Okay, repeat the process on the opposite side. And we could do a little extra room. I'm just going to take the knife into a little gap and just remove a little extra material. Go. Put the knife into the foam through the little cut that we've already got in the tie back. Bend that spike down and then we'll bring it all together. It's always the one you don't dry fit that causes the problem. There we go. So we now have our struts in place, and I think probably the next stage we need to do before we put our or cut out and put our nacelle noses on is we actually need to install the electric motors into the nacelles themselves. So we'll get on with that right away. In your kit, if you've got the electronics, the flight pack that's provided for this model, you should have 2 motors with gearboxes and long prop shafts, but the motors are slightly different in the fact that one has a white rear wall and one has a black rear wall, and also obviously the colours of the wires are different. The reason for that is that one is set up for a counter-rotating propeller, and the other is set up for a normal clockwise rotating propeller. And within our model, if you imagine the nose here, this is how we set it up. So on the starboard or right hand side, we're putting the counter rotating motor, and on the port side we're putting the standard rotating motor, which means that both props will actually be turning inwards towards the fuselage. So the first thing we can do with these is if the wire hasn't already been tidied or shortened, twisted, you can actually just put a twist in it. It holds the 2 wires together. Be careful when you come to this end. You don't want it pulling too tight and pulling the wires out, because that'll mean you've got to get a new motor. But if we just wind it all up like that, and then it slightly neater and slightly shorter, as you can see as well. So we don't need a great deal of wire, because obviously our connectors, in the nacelles are pretty much right by the motors, so we'll have to tuck all this excess wire into one of the cavities that's available to us. So let's just get this all wound up. So our motor mounts are already in place. It just means getting this motor into the mount, and because we've got a sort of a full firewall here rather than one that pops off, we actually have to get the gear in the gearbox through that and in. So doing it as is tricky, if not impossible. What we actually need to do is immediately ruin our motors by snipping the vast majority of the forward pins off the just trying to find the tool. There we go, that's what I need. A little bit of snips. Obviously you can cut them off with a knife, but I'm going to leave probably about 1.5 mil, maybe 2 mil. So just enough to go through the hole available there. Oh look, I've also managed to snip off some of the rear leg. Well, it's not fully snipped off, so we'll just keep that hanging around like that. So this now goes in through there, and so we've got a little more room to get everything pushed through. So what I'll do before I install it is just add a little bit of glue to both the underside here that comes into contact with that plywood motor mount, and also a little on the ply motor mount as well, so that soaks in. There we are. Now, what I would recommend before all is installed is that you check that the motors are fully working. You can do this just by plugging the 2 pins into a battery, and there we go. That's working just fine. Let's just check the other one. There we go. So we know they're both working, which is great. So letting the glue dry on that, we'll just snip this off as well, trying not to snip the rear ones off as I did with that last one. There we go. Okay, so let's just add some glue onto the plate on this too. Go, and just there, little. Great stuff. Okay, let's get this one in. So we're going to push forward, and what we're going to try and do is get those rear pins, just bend them slightly so that they go into the hole that's been made available for them. That's one. The other one's this broken one, which I deliberately, well, accidentally cut one. Okay. So once those 2 pins are free to drop into those holes, then everything else should fit nicely from there. Go. There. Nicely and firmly in place. So with the cable itself, what we can do now is tuck it into. There seems to there's plenty of room between the motor and the back part of the plywood motor mount for us to just start pushing that down into the cavity there. There it goes. And then we can hook this up. So red on the black and white cable is the black cable. So when we plug this in, we want to plug it in so that the white corresponds to the red of the extension cable. Nearly push that back into the wing. What I need is a pair of tweezers, and I seem to have lost mine. Let me just go and find them. Here we go. There we go. All connected. So, repeat the process on the other side. We've snipped our pins off, our forward pins. And we just put the motor in as far forward as it'll go, and then just push the rearward pins into the holes provided. And it should all pop into place. He said, just lift the back out a little bit. There we go. It had rocked back a little bit far for the forward pins to go into their respective holes. And that one's got a little bit of a burr on it, so we might have to drag this out and just sand that down slightly. I can see what the problem is. It's the plastic's been squeezed either side, so it's produced a little bit of a bar across it. It's better. Okay, let's go again. There we go. In she goes. And then once again we can tuck this wire away. And connect it up. So once we've got this done, we can then pretty much complete the nacelles by cutting out our painted nacelle noses and gluing them in place. So red to red this time. Red is left at the moment, red is right now. So wandering off. Okay, red is right. Red is right. Fantastic. So we now have our motors installed. Which nacelle cover is which? Oh, I think I got it right first time. Maybe not. That one's bouncing around like the magnets are rejecting one another. There we go. And that nice V shape at the front should now form over the V shape of the motor itself. Okay, well, that's better. That's better. Fantastic. Right, on to our nacelles. Same sort of process with cutting out. I'm going to separate first, and then I'm just going to cut around the nacelle itself. Nice and careful. Same rules apply. Okay, just a little bit of trimming. Obviously, the more you can get doing this, the less we have to sand. It just depends on how confident you are with the scissors. Really. Okay. So once again, a bit of sanding to remove that white edge. But we've also got on this a few other little tasks. So firstly, we've got this indent here, which is the radiator inlet, the air. Now I'm actually going to remove the inside of it to allow air, well, well, not really to allow air, because it won't go anywhere. Well, I suppose it will. It'll go into the engine or motor bay. It may, I have no idea whether it will actually provide any cooling whatsoever, but it will cause drag, obviously, but as an indent it would anyway. So I'm just going to remove as much of the material as possible just by carving it from the inside. You could actually just remove the sort of the papery bit. That's where the plastic's got so thin that it's become more like a sort of tissue paper rather than plastic itself. I'm going to do that a lot. There we go. Slightly unevenly taken away, so I can work at this with the tip of the knife, just carving little bits off, just evening it all up. If you've got a Dremel or something like that, that would be very useful in situations like this. I think that looks good from the outside, so I'm going to go with that. And the other thing we need to remove is this sort of little button here. We need to open this up entirely. We take the whole thing off, so you can actually go from the outside around. I have got my finger on the inside at the moment, which wouldn't be good if I actually punctured all the way through, so I'd get a scalpel in the end of my finger, but I'm not putting enough pressure on there at the moment to go all the way through. Another technique you can use is just by going from the side like that, and cutting round. There is a danger here that you will scrape the paint that you've laid down already, but this will all be sitting behind the prop mainly anyway. So, but if you can do it carefully, then the damage can be minimized. There we go. So, just need a little more sanding around the edge to get rid of that white bit. So, there we have it. We should be able to bring our model forth, and that will just neatly sit on the front of the nacelle, like so. And all it needs is to be glued into place. But what we do have, you can see here, is that you can see right through to the white material, the 2mm. So what we can actually do is either with some paint, or I've got a black marker here. I'm just going to colour in that area. Obviously, once again, waving a black marker around is a dangerous thing with all the printing on the surface of this aircraft. So if you do go down this route, or painting, be very careful. So there we go, that's done. We'll do it on this one as well, not forgetting that they are both intakes are on the same side. Okay. Well, that's interesting. The 2mm block that sits at the front here is actually right up against the pinion gear of the motor. So I'm actually just going to give that a quick snip, take off a few millimeters. Once again here. There we go. So that's freely running now. Good. That would have caused a little consternation if that hadn't been noticed before the initial flight. So now we are free. There we go. That looks a lot better now. So we're now free to glue that in place. Now before I do it, once again, I'm going to take this hatch off so it doesn't get stuck. And I'm going to add some glue. Obviously, let's just hold this up again, see where it falls. So we need glue all around this area here on the sort of first step rather than the second step. And then just in front of all the Tyvek. Go. So if I now bring this into contact, like so, and in fact I can leave it there to dry off. It's not going anywhere. It sits there nicely. Excellent. Right. Well, I don't think I need to show you the second cell, so I will complete that now, and then we can move on to the next stage.